Hey, live. Welcome to another interview. We have Shannon Renee. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks.
The co-founder of Objective Personality and Alpha Queen of Objective Personality
Oh
tribe, I
no,
guess.
we're setting the
Yes.
bar high.
Yeah, there we are. So let's maybe start with how you got started in typology. Like you got started before you met Dave?
No.
No.
Okay. I took a test with my workplace. I think a lot of people do, like the Strength Finder, I think it was. Yeah, Strength Finder. And just they make you take that to see, your strengths, of course, coming into the workplace. And it was like ENTJ, I was like, no, I'm definitely not a commander. I don't want to command anyone. I don't want to control people. So I was just like, this thing's dumb, and I tossed it. So I was not interested in that. I was more interested in stuff that I saw, of course, ST saw working in the real world, and I hadn't seen that working in the real world yet. So of course it wasn't sensor real to me. And yeah, it was something that Dave reintroduced to me, basically, like when we started talking. I remember we were hanging out and he had asked me at one point, because I was processing something. I was processing something, and he was like, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And I had learned a little bit about what introvert extrovert meant. And I was like, I think I'm an extrovert. I definitely like being around other people. I don't like talking to them, but I like being around people. And he was like, okay. Because I think he was kind of seeing that I was possibly NTJ, just the way I was talking. And so he was seeing that I was using NI, and kind of piecing and puzzling things together. So he's just like, are you an introvert or extrovert? I'm like, no, I definitely need the humans around, or I get a little lonely, that kind of thing. That's about it though.
Yeah. and so then, like, how from there I guess you got into the RC business before typology?
Yeah.
And then so typology wasn't even on your radar yet?
Well, Dave had been studying it for many years, and he, I guess he and the business partner that we had for a while, they were both studying it for the sake of sales. It was just a marketing tool is how we were using it. There was no like deeper discovery. And at that time, we really kind of trusted Myers-Briggs for the sake of Myers-Briggs. I mean, we tried to own the letters a little bit. We tried to go a teensy bit deeper on the letters. And then it was like, then we really started kind of seeing that there was a lot going on here, and we started kind of seeing there was deeper levels. Then I decided to start reading some Carl Jung, and I was like, okay, the functions of what's going on here. And even one of the interns that we had at the time was studying and was like, you guys need to get in on the functions. And so I read a lot of Carl Jung stuff where he was getting a lot deeper into the actual cognitive functions. Because for a while I was like, what is feeling? Is feelings just straight emotions? What is feelings? What do you mean by feelings? What does J even mean? What does P even mean? And like, how am I going to use, for me, ST, like, how am I going to use that in reality? What is that even, how can I use this tool? And so as soon as we started looking into the functions, that was when things got real, because I started seeing and I started dreaming about it, and kind of recognizing the NI correlations between functions. And I was like, oh, okay, so all of the extroverted functions are doing kind of the same thing. All of the introverted functions are doing kind of the same thing. And the more we started getting into the deeper part of the functions, the more we started going, these letters are just code for the functions. The functions are really where the meat of this is at. And that's where it was just a choice to start diving deeper and deeper and deeper on, I think I can actually use these in reality if I own what's going on with the core, which is the functions. And then later on, once we started owning like the human needs of the functions, that was when it became just ultimately useful.
The core of the functions.
The core of the functions, the human needs. That was when things really changed, because it was like, wait a minute, you can, because it felt so fake, like all the shallow, like, if you care about history, you have SI. Like, okay, well, but that guy cares about history, and that guy cares about history, and that guy cares about history. This is a little fake. I don't see this actually being anything that can help us determine who somebody is, how they function, and stuff like that. So once the human needs got connected, that was just us studying Tony Robbins a lot at the time and seeing, okay, wait a minute, these correlate, this is actually what he's talking about of significance. This is what he's talking about of certainty. He's talking about OI, the organizing introverted functions. Then we started really going, now you can get to the core because you're seeing somebody's actual like fundamental needs being played out, you know? So yeah, that's when it got fun, you know?
Right. Okay. And then, so then you guys sort of doubled down on trying to figure out the code and crack it, or like this was still during the RC days?
Yeah, honestly, yes. And honestly, it was so much about just, it became an obsession because you can't stop thinking about it. Like, you know, it's kind of like built into the human wiring. Like, of course you can't stop thinking about, wait, I'm having a problem. I'm having a connectivity problem. I can't understand my partner. I can't understand my coworkers or whatever it is. And we're like, okay, so they said this, they think like this is where they are motivated. And the motivation side of things is where it was like, that's going to solve everything. You know, of course we're looking for NI, the thing that is going to solve everything. I want to have the one NI concept that solves all of these little sensor problems, you know? And it became very addicting in our daily lives because we had goals. We had goals to get somewhere in business, to actually get to the next stages of life. Of course, everyone does, you know? And when you're seeing this tool actually get to the fundamental core of people's motivations, you're now going, wait a minute, what if I do this? If this person is motivated by that and I do this, how do they react? Okay, wait a minute. They did react. Okay, wait a minute. I'm getting somewhere. And then of course you can't stop thinking about it because you're just using it to solve problems. So of course we used it in RC. We were using it to solve problems in RC. It was fascinating to see just how completely different the customers that we had think than us. You know, I don't have SI. I don't think like SI. It was a very foreign thing to see a entire crowd of people that all were using SI ask the exact same things. And it was hilarious. You're like, this isn't real, right? Like it's bizarre because now you start seeing humanity in a whole different way. You're like, we feel like little robots, like little programmed robots. Like this is a joke. There's no way that the last guy that emailed me isn't the same guy that's emailing me now. Because it was funny not being my own functions. Of course, when you talk to other people that are your same functions, their concerns are also your concerns. So you're like, oh, of course this matters. Like that's a big deal. But when somebody's asking you for, I want the specs, and I don't just want the specs, I want like every little like 0.0009751. I want all of the specs of all of the motors of every plane to an exact degree. And, you know, me with SE, I'm like, just slop it out. Just go get that one. You know, like, why does it matter? Like I was so not into the SI. So seeing that from the outside, you're like, okay, there's something else going on here. If I'm seeing them, they probably can see me. And I want to be able to kind of understand my own patterns so that I'm not clueless of what I'm like demanding the outside world to function like, you know, like if I have my functions that are so normal to me, but somebody else is like, why do you talk like that? You know, why are you asking for the 0.001 in your way? You know? So yeah, it became just a tool that we were using everywhere in business and in our relationships, in my own kid, everything. You just get desperate and you're like, this actually works, you know?
So when did the shift go to like actually getting rid of the RC business? Like what happened there and going all in on typology?
Right. Well, what happened with the RC stuff, we were always with the thought of, I want to win here and make all of my mistakes here so that the next business, there was always a next business. It was never not. There was never like, we weren't like done with RC.
The NI planner there.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. I know. That was always Dave. Dave always thinks, you know, 10, 20, 50 years, 100 years into the future. That's where he lives, which is why, you know, the NIs are always so impatient because they don't live here, you know? So it's like, why aren't we there yet? You know? Yeah. So, yeah. And so of course it's like, great, then make all your mistakes in a business that you're not, that your heart isn't in, or it's not your mission. It's not where your meaning is at. And so that was the goal. And so of course, let's say everything in your life has 100 problems, right? So even your own like normal basics, Maslow's pyramid stuff has 100 problems. And you're like, if I don't get to the point where I systematize and solve all of these problems, I don't get to move on to the next stage because I haven't even figured out how to solve these problems. why would I go to the next business thinking it's going to be any different than this? Because it's not. It's still going to have, you know, customer copy and paste emails. It's still going to have frequently asked question pages. It's still going to have, you know, bylaws. It's still going to have how do you manage payment systems, all that stuff. It has all the same stuff, all the same NI stuff. And as soon as you solve all that stuff inside of that box, you can then copy and paste all of your lessons, or even the ability to learn lessons to the next business. And that's exactly what we did. So with RC, we were just using it as a platform to make mistakes, because we just automatically default recognize we're going to make a lot of mistakes. So I'm going to make them here. And it was like, oh, and we just defined what our 100 things were. And with RC, it was like, okay, we got to figure out how to make planes consistently, because this is just what the market was dictating. It was like, we got to be able to make a new plane every month, and then have it designed, put into CAD, have the forum threads made, photographs made, video made for it, and sell it, and have, of course, the payment system for it, have the, you know, customer service thing owned, and then be able to do it again the next month, and then be able to do it again the next month, and be able to do it again. Well, I didn't know how to use CAD. I didn't know how to use CAD. I didn't like planes. I don't know how to make planes. I didn't know how to do any of these. So this is all stuff that I had to get to the point where there was a clockwork for it. And so, yeah, you just get to the point where every day you're like, this is the thing that I'm solving today, or even this month. And it wasn't even until we were getting to like version 3, version 4, version 5 of the thing that we were working on until it was really sailing. And, you know, yeah, like I had to take over. I had to take over our server. So our server was, you know, like backups for your server. Oh, your website's shut down today. All of those things had all compartments inside of it. And when we were done solving each one of those categories, we were like, we're done. I think we had gotten to the point where our server was done shutting down. It didn't shut down anymore. That was solved. Our payment system was solved. Customers were happy. I had a whole system for building and creating new planes, depending on whatever plane we chose. I was even getting it down to like being able to do it in a couple days. And then photographs done. I had all of my copy paste of exactly how to photograph, white background, everything. So it was just, I was able to output a new plane every month. And I think we did feminine sensory, I don't know, like 6 or 7. I think we might've done like 6 of them before I was like, okay, I did it. We did it. Like they were just clockwork. And once it was clockwork and there was no problems, we were ready. We were like ready to be done. And then the thing was just bringing in money, you know, every month, but we weren't doing anything for it. And we were like, okay, we're ready to now move on. I'm now going to sell our forum to the next guy that wants it. And that was it. And then we sold it and we were done. And it was great. It was like a very like a complete feeling. And then by that time we had already started, you know, practicing with videos, how to do videos for the ops stuff, you know? So yeah, pretty smooth transition.
And so you already knew a business, like right from the get-go, that you guys were going to crack the code, that you
no.
presented?
No, we didn't know we were going to crack any codes. We were not trying to crack codes. Yeah, right. No. Well, once we started poking at the code, as soon as we started seeing that there were jumpers, when we saw that there was the human needs attached and that there was jumpers, we recognized that there was a whole nother layer to the code that did not pre-exist. And so that's when we started feeling the burden of, we have to take this all the way. We have to go and solve the whole puzzle before we're going to be allowed to be free of it, you know, because our brains were not going to stop. There's no way. Once you start seeing that, like, this is connected, like, you know, you're digging up gold. And yeah. Right. And then, of course, every discovery.
So is there freedom from this then?
Is there ever freedom from it? Is that what we said? No.
Yeah, you're like, until we're allowed to be free of it. But yeah,
I know, so. Right? I know. It's such, like, at first it was absolutely like, it feels free at this point because the 512 has settled. I know that all the NEs out there are like, but there could be more possibilities. I'm like, Sure. Maybe someday. But
Right.
I'm not seeing that this has like, more. Maybe it does. It's at this point way more than we even need to have it do what is the usefulness of it. Like the usefulness is, can you predictably understand someone's behavior over time? Yeah, like too much so, So if I got any more predictability, I don't want to know any more about you, I don't want to know about
Right.
your dog's name and what you have in your underwear drawer. Like I don't need to know any more things. But that's where the freedom started feeling more complete, because it was absolutely like a hijack of the mind when we would discover a new coin. So every time it was like, okay, now you have the animals. Okay, wait a minute. Now you have the second animal. Okay, wait a minute. Now you have, the activated animal. Like each discovery, and then of course the modalities. And it felt like a hijack, because it was something that would take days to process, sometimes weeks, months to process. And like almost like a healing of your brain to process it, because it was, your brain would start cycle, or at least mine did. I know Dave's did about the same thing, but it was like, it would start cycling through every single person that event, and start doing kind of, for me, like an SE Rolodex, where it would just spin the mind, and you'd start like, oh my God, that's why that happened. Oh my God, that's why. And you're now collecting all of past data and putting it into this NI pattern. And it would get really exhausting, because your brain is like, wow, because for a while we thought some people's types, because you'd have an ENTJ and an ENTJ, and we're like, why are these so different? Like my dad and I were a really good example. He's visual ENTJ, but he's blast, play, sleep, and I'm play, consume, sleep. So just very opposite types of ENTJs. So you're like, why are these ENTJs so different? And in the beginning, we would sweep a lot under the rug of modified. We kept using that word. Oh, maybe it's because they're modified. Maybe they had this kind of upbringing versus that kind of upbringing. And each time one of those coins came out, it was like, okay, so that whole thing that I thought was just a unique variation is just because this person's third animal is this versus that. And it became a little bit more boring. Like people just became extremely computer programs, but it feels complete, and I don't feel trapped anymore by the hijacking of a new coin. We'll see. Maybe there'll be more.
Right. So like you started discovering these new coins after you had already decided we need to get to the same type, and you weren't getting
that was
accurate enough. And so the extra coin would help you get more accurate.
Right.
Right. So,
yeah.
So like, is this how the whole thing started, or is this how it just progressed, and then you were finally able to type at the same level because the coins, because like the code opened up? Yeah.
Well, that's how we would play the game. I mean, every time one of the binary coins were just a hijacking of, like, we would start putting people in the docks. This is what really started kind of pulling out the coins. Sort of the coins would get kind of pulled out of. We started getting these visuals from people's faces, right? And then we're like, why do these two look alike and these two look alike? And then our brains would start going, is there something we're missing here? Why are these people a lot alike? Why are these people a lot alike? What's different about them? And then we would start seeing, okay, this person has a lot of blast. This person is not. So what's going on there? And then we would play the game of like, okay, what did you get for that person? Okay, what did you get for that person? And that's how we would kind of determine, are we both seeing something happening in reality? Are we both coming to reality while hitting our own biases, coming to reality to see that there is something happening here consistently? Otherwise, it's just us convincing each other or convincing ourselves, I see something. Now, obviously, a lot of times it was fascinating how much they looked alike, their lives were alike. I mean, that was a lot of information that was outside of our own biases that would happen. But most of the game that we would play all the way along was, okay, I think I'm seeing a coin. What did you get for my mom, your dad, the neighbor, that guy, this guy, that guy? Because it was forcing us to go, are we seeing a repetitive pattern here? and why are we seeing a repetitive pattern here, and what is the pattern, what is the coin, and what is it doing consistently that we can both start tracking, you know, over time. So yeah, that whole game was like track, and then from the tracking, put them in a doc. From the doc, information would come back at us, and then we would have to go back to the whiteboard and go, what is the information that we're seeing? Okay, I think that this is blast. I think that's what blast is. Okay, now go back to typing separately again to see if we're seeing the same thing. It was a whole, you know, I guess you could call it a scientific process with the fundamental assumption of two things. He and I are extremely biased. We're all extremely biased. That is our fundamental core, you know, religion, if you can call it. We're very aggressive against our own biases. And that's what started this whole entire thing, is I can't trust my own subjective mind. And that's like the most obvious thing to us. And from there, it was, okay, so we need to move ourselves to what's happening in reality, not the other way around. And so like the typing in separate rooms, the coming to the same type, the looking at the math, the re-questioning our own math. Okay, are we seeing the same thing? Why are these two people looking alike? Why are those two people looking alike? Maybe we did something wrong. Let's try it again. And then it just came to the point where we started seeing things on an extremely repetitive pattern of behavior is one thing that we would consistently track. Okay, now watch this person's pattern of behavior over time. And that was something that became very interesting, is you would see people's lives be very much the same genetic problems, you know, same health problems, same crashes, same reoccurring communications. It's very interesting. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. And so like, I guess you didn't really get into people's life problems as much until you had actual clients, right? Like you could, unless it was like on the media sort of thing.
Right.
So like,
right.
Yeah. So like when were you able to start, or are you still through that process to start piecing together what people's life problems should be and what they should struggle with and stuff like that?
Well, that just comes from time of studying our own selves and our own relationship type things, and then studying other people's relationship issues. Like you're watching thousands of people. Like you're watching thousands of people, and you're watching ones that are all the way up here, you know, on the spectrum, You're watching people on the spectrum up here of extremely successful people of this particular type. And then you're watching people all the way at the bottom of that exact same type. It's like, you know, Dave describes it like looking at a car. Like, okay, so these are still Toyota Corollas. Okay, this is a Toyota Corolla. But this is what this person did with it. And this is what this person did with it. So why is it that this person is so extremely successful and this one is not? And now you can't help but you're studying the patterns of humans. You're getting extremely immersed in what it takes to become stronger. Alpha is what we are calling it. And what makes them different? What pathway did they choose? How did they modify themselves? If it's still the same exact parts, how did they get to where they are at? You know, you're looking at a Tony Robbins and you see other people who are the same exact type who are going down a very negative and dark road. Same parts. So why did Tony make it and someone else didn't? So now the whole other side, which is actually what we care a lot more about, is the whole side of the hero's journey. You know, what does it really take? Because great, now you know the parts, now you know the math. Anyways, is there a way out? Is there a way out of you're just a computer program? You have all of your parts determining the pathway that you're going to take. I already know what you're going to subjectively choose. And sure, you could go down that pathway. You can go all in on your saviors, which is what most people do. And you're welcome to do that. You're welcome to go all in. By the way, that's how we type so easy. Some people are really easy to type because you're just cranking all in. And the majority of people will follow that exact same pathway. And so it's not, there's no confusion there of the math and the parts. Like that's kind of the easiest part about this whole thing, is seeing somebody's recurring patterns of behavior over time. That's super easy. Okay, great. How do you get out? What do you do to get out? And that's, you know, if you're watching thousands of people, which at this point, we're just watching a conveyor belt of thousands of people. They're all saying the exact same thing. It feels like it's so real. It feels like it came from their mind. And we're just like, yeah, the last guy said that. Yeah, the last guy said that. You know, of course, me, OE, I'm like, yawn. Like it's so crazy how much we are just little copy pastes of each other, you know? And I'm looking at Tony and I'm going, wait a minute, why is Tony and Gary Vee and Ed Milet and, you know, Tom Bilyeu and just the whole, there's just a ton of people that are hitting at just high RPMs. Why did they make it out? And when you listen to the motivational speakers, they are saying all the exact same stuff. It's all the same. And so then we're like, okay, great. Now that we got the code, cute, neat, what do you do to get to their position? Because they're all saying the same thing. And so now we're just doing the same thing that we did with the code, which was digging deeper and going, what are the common parts? What is the commonalities? What does your life look like? What do you mean by you have to get up every day and you have to have a goal and you have to have gratitude and you have to actually build your own identity and build your character and question your own self and put pressure on yourself and manage pain? What do you mean by that? What are you doing and how did you get to that point? And we're seeing that the consistent patterns with the hero's journey are 1,000%. Like they're no wonder it's so impossible to get there, because it's giving up short-term pain, like letting go of caring about short-term pain and getting addicted to, I'm going to stop myself from long-term pain. I'm going to stop playing the game of I trust and I believe in my saviors alone. I'm addicted to the feeling of my subjective biases. I see this in this person's type, done. That's so addicting. It feels so good. I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to go off of my feelings in this moment. That feels so good. No question. Keep hammering at your saviors and don't ever back down. That is so addicting. Right. Most people don't make it out of that. They don't want to play the game of question self. Why? It feels way too good to win right now. Why would I give up right now for future? Anything. Why would I do that? Why would I ever question that I might be off? That doesn't feel good. Yeah. But that's what the outputs
this is something that I was. Yeah, this is something that I was also looking into. It's that the short term and the long term effects of our functions.
Right.
And so like the short term pleasure from our saviors,
right,
come at a long term pain. And then the short-term pain of our demons come at a long-term pleasure if we're able to overcome them.
Right.
And so the question I was looking at was, how does NI deal with it? And then I was thinking the same thing. Like NI is like in the now. They're not thinking long-term because they're thinking for like one single moment. They're not thinking about what happens after that moment or what happens up to that moment.
Right.
So it's using So like even when you're talking about long-term benefits, it's not, NI aren't exempt from it because they're still doing something right now.
Totally. Yeah, because it's basically the addiction to, I want to use two functions all the time. And when the outside world tries to tell me things are not going well, because the outside world will tell you all day long. Your mom, your spouse, your kids, your family, your environment, your workplace, everyone is communicating constantly that you're all in on two saviors. And we as humans have the most fascinating ability to go blame, release, releasing the pressure. And the ones that make it out, like Tony Robbins and Gary Vee and Wes Watson, he's one that I'm watching a lot lately, just a gangster of a guy. Like they got stuck. They got rock in a hard place so intensely that they couldn't release the blame anymore. And that seems to be, and you see it in every movie. It's not like the human mind doesn't know. We put it in every movie out there. The hero is the one that gets so trapped and blocked in to a do or die situation that they don't get to blame the outside world anymore. They get stuck because they can't any longer ignore and shove away that the outside world is trying to tell them it's you. And the hero, and what we're consistently staring at, the hero is the one that finally turns around and goes, oh my God, it's me. It's me. That is my debt. That is, I have not been wanting to look at that. That is so painful. How am I ever going to pay that back? I want to run from that, but I can't. I can't go unconscious anymore. The addiction is the unconscious. I love being addicted. And that's where the majority of us will spend our time, finding ways for distraction, because I love being addicted. And when you can't run from that anymore, you get forced with the mirror of staring at your face and staring at your demon function responsibility that you've been running from for so long. It's why we get addicted to this typing game, because, well, if I could just be a different type, if I could be this type, then I don't have to actually face working on my demons. Why would I want to work on my demons? Because then I'd have to blame myself, and that is painful. And the fixed mindset says, I can't move. And if I can't move, I'm going to have to find a way to survive, which is blame, 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 release the pressure. And until you get stuck in a rock and a hard place where you can't blame anymore, you can only stare at your own self and you stay conscious, that's when you do something about it. So it's not necessarily live in the future. It's stop running from the problems that you cause. Because you can go unconscious. People can go unconscious. It's fascinating what we do. And I did this for years. I was the worst of the worst of the worst. I knew better and I still did it. I still ran. I still found a way to blame, just addictively. Nope, it's not me. No, that one wasn't me. Just TE, aggressive, EJ attacking the tribe. No, that one was definitely that guy. Just in no way, shape, or form wanting to turn around and stare at my own identity and be like, that's painful. That's really ugly. That's a lot of ugliness. And that's mine. That is my debt to pay. Only mine. And it's not until you do that, until you can actually get to work. And you either, at that point, that's why they call it deathbed. You either want to die because it's so much debt, or you adopt a growth mindset because it's the only way you're going to be able to chip away over time and put your hope in the future of eventually I do get out of this, because I just got to do a little bit of work every single day and put into that future goal. And then you do use NI, got to use a future goal to get out. Otherwise it gets too overwhelming.
Right. Yeah. Right. So can we talk about your functions a little bit and how they play out in your life specifically? Sure.
Let's talk about my functions.
All right. So, okay. So you start off with masculine TE. I guess that's your main savior. How do you see yourself as addicted to that?
Oh God. All I want to do. And then obviously I have to work on it a lot. You see me talking a lot about my emotions or what matters to me. I've had to practice bringing that up, especially on video, because ST on video is very dry. So I have to practice laughing, using emotions to connect to people. But all I want to do all day is be like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. How have you not thought this through? That doesn't make any sense. That is stupid. That's how I want to talk all day, all day. And I just, because I'm that's how I think. TE, it's okay, so that doesn't make sense. And if you think through, this logic doesn't connect to this logic, that logic doesn't connect to this logic, these don't connect over here. So that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Can't you see that if you did that, this guy wouldn't be doing that? If you did that, this guy wouldn't be doing that. Come on, really? Haven't you thought it through? I just get so masculine about it and so punchy about it. And it's so obvious to me that those blocks don't fit together. And that's it. And all I want to do in a conversation or an argument is be very aggressive about things not being accurate or not making sense. So yeah, that's my addiction. Pretty much.
Do you tend to focus on how things should be, or how people should act and behave, or how the truth, or people, I don't know, maybe along those lines?
That sounds like FE, but yeah, yes, yeah. I do focus on how people should, why don't people get it? That's what really, if I was in the most immature, if you were to hear me ranting, I'd be like, how are you not seeing that that's inaccurate? How are you getting away with that? That's not true. That's where all I want to do is be like, That's so off, you know, just argue the inaccuracies, you know, and of course it's based on my perspective, you know, go bang on the tribe because my perspective says that that's completely illogical and you're an idiot, you know?
So have you ever come into contact with other masculine TEs, and what does that sort of look like when you're both
I love
doing
them.
that?
I love them.
Oh, really? Okay.
I do. Well, at this stage of my life, you know, before I would say, so like you're talking about like pre-growth versus post-growth. Pre-growth.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about let's talk about me in a default state. Oh, they scared me. I was scared of them. They were the scary ones. It's so funny. It's so funny how much the EJs can't see themselves. It's crazy shit. You know, like we just don't see that we're the ones. Here's what's so crazy about that R type, or just, you know, people, demon emotions, whatever you want to say. There's lots of parts that are very similar. People do this everywhere. But the amount that the EJs, especially with demon FI, will work their own self up, like get their own emotions freaked out. And then the whole tribe has to react off of their weird emotions. And they think it's coming from the outside world. That one's my favorite. That one's pretty funny. Because you're just thinking, that guy was mean to me. It's like, you were weird. That's why they were mean to you. If you weren't so weird, they wouldn't have reacted, you know? But before I had the growing stages, I was always threatened, constantly felt like somebody was attacking. That's the EJ fear. Somebody is attacking me. That person, their eyebrows, they're attacking me. Because you're so scared of your little baby, you know, introverted world that you think the tribe is somehow going to come after you. So you just pull up the big masculine logic machine and let me show them how smart I am so that I can beat them with logic and then they will leave me alone. It's like, calm down. It's coming from you, you know? So now that I can see myself, and again, that goes back to that crevice that you got to cross when you go over the deathbed there. The deathbed is see how bad you are. If you can't see your debt, you're the only one because everybody else can see your debt. That's the crazy part.
It sounds like that was a huge motivator too, is that the pain in the FI, like the momentary pain in the FI. And so the TE would come out to fight in order to avoid that momentary pain.
Totally.
And if you could just get over that pain, then you'll get that long-term reward.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It thought that it was getting away with it. Absolutely. And yeah, once you get past the point of being able to see self and blame self, 1,000%, by the way, because you can't even have one little ounce of, no, it really was that guy. Like, nope. Even that, still self. Because now you're choosing to be the grown-up because the grown-up takes all responsibility. Once you go to that stage and you can actually see yourself, it gives you so much empathy, compassion, understanding, because now you're not going, well, I don't do that. Now you don't play that game anymore. I would never do that. I don't behave like that. No, now you're like, I get you. I hear it. I understand. That is painful. I feel what you're feeling. I know what you're going through. That is really hard. But you're still an idiot. And I'll still kick your ass for that lovingly because you still are being an idiot. And I needed my ass kicked for the stuff that I was doing. And I was grateful for that. Afterwards, I was very thankful for people like even like Dave, who stood by me and was willing to be honest with me. Very thankful for that. So the people who now come my way, who are masculine TE or whatever type, I'm loving, but I'm extremely honest to them, knowing like, this is what I would have needed. This is what I would have wanted for my own self, you know? So yeah, I don't fear people anymore. People are just programs that are running off of either, you know, too much saviors or, just savior functions, fears, their life patterns that they've, you know, even some environmental type things that have built into them. So you just have compassion because you know where they're coming from, you know, pretty much.
So can we talk about the fear of people that you used to have? Do you know where it was coming from?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not willing to look at your demons, if you're not willing to spend time there, then all of the input that you're getting from the outside world is a threat. Absolutely. Every single input from the outside world is seen as a threat. So, you know, the deciders go all in on this game. I want to be all in on my DE. So I have to help everybody. And that's where I get my identity. And I won't look at my status. I won't look at that I'm a loser. I won't look at that I really am not good enough, or my standards are ridiculous, or I'm needy and annoying. Won't look at that. I won't be responsible for that. I refuse to be responsible for my status. And if somebody tells me that I'm actually not good enough, I cry, feel sad, feel insecure. Why are they attacking me? I did all this stuff for you. Isn't that the only thing that is needed? DE is the only thing. Helperton everyone is the only thing that is needed. If I just come up with all these ideas and help everyone, that's the only thing that is needed. You shouldn't make me responsible for building my own identity and building my standards. And so people that don't immediately go, "You're amazing," are seen as a threat. Anyone that would say, "I don't like you," or "You're annoying," like to attack the identity, is seen as an absolute threat. Why? Because I don't want to look at that function. I don't know how to use that function. That function is scary. I'm not responsible for that. That's hard. Or on the other side, if you're DI, you're like, all in on status, all in on identity, all in on my way of doing things. And the thought of the tribe needing anything from you or wanting you to go against your way is seen as a threat. No, I'm all in on my identity and my way and my thinking. The tribe wants me to break my way of thinking. That is not something I can do. I am obligated to honoring myself and honoring my ideas, or honoring my emotions, or honoring my standards. These are my standards, and I don't lower myself. And if the tribe breaks that, it's a threat.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of one thing you said there, like early on, where you said your standards. Is that something that you find is something for you, that like you have standards that everyone should live up to, and you're living up to them, and why can't they live up to them? And maybe it's not fair to put that out onto people. Is that something that TE has to deal with?
Oh, sure. I would just say that TE gets their standards, DE in general, and most people don't realize they're doing this. So it's not like it's somebody it's not like it's going to help you type yourself or anything. But DEs will get their standards from the tribe. Don't know they're doing it, but 1,000% they're getting the permission of whether it was enough or not enough. And that's where the standard is. Is it enough? Well, how high is your standard? Well, this guy said this was enough. Is that enough? Well, this guy said it was enough. Okay, so today I'm good enough because that guy said the standards were here and I went here, so therefore I'm good enough. Well, what if the guy has standards up to here and I can only go to here? Oh no, I'm not good enough. Well, I hate that guy. Well, why does he have standards so high? Well, he's a jerk. He's arrogant. He has too lofty of standards. And that's how the DE thinks of the world, is I'm constantly trying to meet someone else's standards, and they change depending on who's in the room. And you as the DE have to start being responsible for, where are your standards? And what are you going to do to, by the way, yes, you are a loser because your standards are up here and you're down here. You now have to actually put in the work to become stronger and meet your own standards by putting in time into yourself over time. That's
so like you get your standards from the tribe, okay?
Naturally,
yeah. So now and so then you have these standards, and then you see someone else not living up to those standards. Is that where the fight will come out? Be like, hey, you should be here. Yeah,
sure. If somebody questions, so if somebody, let's say somebody questions the DE, and they're like, I'm gonna come up with my standards are here. And you're like, hey, I've already checked the whole tribe and I've moved myself to the majority, to the spectrum of the tribe. I've already moved my standards up here. You're an idiot if you think that this is acceptable. And that's basically what the TE is checking. It's checking, no, this is where the logic of the spectrum is. And if you think you're better than everyone, you're wrong because so-and-so does this. And so, and then now this is what you hear all the time. This is how you type people too. It's like, well, this guy said this and this guy said this and this guy, and they're just telling you about the spectrum. The spectrum says this is where the standard is at, you know, and so, you can build your own standard. There's still going to be areas that the DE will build their own standards for, you know, and if we've built our own standards and we have very aggressive standards and you're not meeting those standards, I'll still fight you for that, you know? And
so then living up to those, like living up to those standards for yourself and always striving to be at that standard, is that something that maybe causes your FI to suffer because it's not good for you to be at that level at all times? Like you're not taking care of yourself?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If I'm trying to meet somebody else's standards, especially if it's not even in my lane, you know, if it's not in my lane, like I'm trying to meet somebody else's standard in their lane and I'm just jumping to help them on their path, you're distracting from your own path, which is something that I used to do all the time. I used to constantly be trying to helperton everybody on their missions and where they're going. And when you do that, you're just, you haven't put any time into your own path. You have no path. You have no identity. You have no built self, built self standards. So yeah, that happens a lot. You see a lot of EJs, a lot of DEs that are like, and it's, you could say I'm in the same situation, but it's like, you'll see a lot of DEs that will have a partner and they're like, I'm on my partner's mission. My partner has a business and I'm on his mission. And that's exactly what I started this thing out doing. I did not care about personality. I did not care. I'll help you with your stupid thing. Sure. And then it came a time where I had to choose. Do I want this to be who I am? And if it is who I'm going to choose to have this be who I am, I better individually choose it or I cause problems, because you can't live on somebody else's path consistently. It doesn't work because your own internal DI will revolt. It will.
Right. Even if you don't want it to, it'll just, because it's not good for you. It realizes what's good for you. Yeah,
totally.
So then where does the long-term pleasure then come in for your FI? Having to overcome that. Having overcome that pain, that short-term pain that it's going through. How does it get to that long-term reward? Yeah.
When you start being the one that can actually tell yourself that you are good enough, it is extremely empowering. It's extremely addicting because you're no longer moved by the game of the tribe says I'm good enough today. You get to the point where the whole tribe goes, I hate the way you do XYZ. And you go, that's okay, because my internal standards say that I'm going here next. And that's the only bar that I'm trying to jump over. And it's wonderful because it gets, the TE wants to get pulled in a million different directions. Well, that person says we're not explaining this good enough. Well, that person says we're not helperting this. So it's like, well, my standards are right here. So according to my standards, I'm doing great. I had a great day. and therefore you can go to sleep at night in peace. There is so much peace in that. Being able to use both of my desires, being able to use all four of my functions is extremely addicting because you don't feel stuck. You never feel stuck again. It's wonderful.
Okay. And so then your next function would be SE, and that would give you play. So do you see yourself as a play savior? Does that play out in your life all the time? Is that something that's...
Yeah. I'm a playful idiot. Yeah, I mean, that's where we got the term Skippy from. I would literally just run through the house. You be skipping, like that's where it came from. Just it's gathering information. It's wanting to learn new. It's being willing to jump at an opportunity. Play energy. Willing to jump at opportunities. Oh, this is happening. Okay, let's do it. Okay, let's do it right now. Okay, let's go. Like, just being willing to. The top priority is that we get new information. That is the top priority. As long as I can learn more, I'll do whatever it takes to learn more. I'll climb that mountain right there if I can learn some more information. Yeah. Play. Just gathering. And sometimes it means bothering the tribe. All right, I'll bother the tribe a little bit so I can get a little bit more information. I'll deal with people just to get some new information. Yeah.
And so then so like, I'm trying to think, how does that play mediate itself? How do you like you start off at your morning in full play, or it comes in later in the day, or it's just constantly there?
I definitely in the beginning of the day want to go and check all the boxes. It's very like SETE or TESE wants to go and check all the boxes. Let me go check all the boxes. So I feel like I'm doing something. It's very just like, I did things, done, do things, do, did, done. And that's like, I don't have to be running around the house to do that. If it's on the computer or whatever it is, it just feels really good to check all the boxes, play energy. And then once you check all the boxes, you're like, okay, I feel like I'm now allowed to go do something else. I'm now allowed to go learn for the self. For me, consume is next. So then I'll go and yeah, I love tutorials, that kind of stuff. I've like had to like change what I go learn so that I'm learning for the sake of, you know, the op type stuff. Like I'll go and study the next person I'm doing for a class, stuff like that. But it's still like, I want to sit and just take in, and I want to like, it's like what you're doing right now. You're just calmly taking in, like consuming, taking in the new information. That's what I want to do the majority of the time, but I'm like obligated to go check all the boxes. So I'm like allowed to go consume. And then by like, gosh, sometimes depending on what it is, like if we had like a planning day or a meeting type day where we're just talking about the future a lot, where we're talking about simulated plans for the future, that will knock me out. That will be tiring. Like just talking about the same thing over and over and over and over again, that will make me tired. And then it's like nap time. I have to go crash. Like, you know, my sleep is very, you know, I would look at myself as like, I'm definitely asleep, because I stare at that. Like I want it so bad. I covet my sleep, you know, and that happens like afternoon. And then, yeah, Dave makes fun of me because a lot of times, like right before bedtime, that's when I want to tell my like, you know, answers to the universe talk, when I start going and blasting late at night at the worst time, you know? Yeah.
Well, I guess that's also the time, like that's where his last animal should kick in, according to so he's ready to consume your blast, I guess. So
there you go. Yeah. Works out good.
So, okay. So that SE then is feminine. How do you see it play out as feminine? Like not in a visual way, but more as like, how does the sensory move you, I guess, more? Or is that how it works?
It is so frustrating being the savior sensory, and then it's OE, and then it's feminine. Like I'm obligated to remember things to be able to prove my facts, and I can't. Like I just can't hold on to stuff. My brain just wants to just throw it out the back of my brain as fast as it can. And it's hard because it's hard to like, it's really hard to track time. It's really hard because I'm not holding on to the physical, you know, I'm holding on to intuition, and the intuition is demon. So it's like, it's just a very frustrating, it feels like, you know, it feels like this, where I'm constantly trying to grab the information and it's just falling through my hands. So I'll do a lot of note taking. In fact, that's how I type. Like when I type, I do a lot of data recording to help myself remember, because I'll forget what the person said 2 seconds earlier, you know? Once I record it down, I'll remember it for a really long time, because I'll have the visual of the sensory. That really helps, you know? So writing things down, writing notes down, that helps me so much. Writing every data point down, that helps. So like, yeah, note taking helps track stuff, because at least I can see it in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes like in college, I used to do like drawings on the side, and that would help me on tests, because I would remember where it was on the page and visually what it looked like. And then I'll see the words and I'll see the picture, and then I'll like connect it to an image. Then I can remember, oh, that was the mitochondria. That's what that was. You know, just like the stupidest things that you have to memorize. I wouldn't be able to memorize it until I had some kind of drawing or something with it. So yeah, just feels very like whoosh, you know. Feminine.
And I guess like the creating the planes in the RC business was more NI, but like you still had to work with sensory in some way. Like, I don't know, also as like an artist or a photographer, you'd have to work with sensory in some way, or manipulate it and control it. Does that feel weird, wrong?
It was so hard. Here's why it was hard. It was hard because I'm very 2D with my illustrating. Like I don't have the spatial awareness that the masculine sensory a lot of times do. And so I'm just like, even my illustrations, because I was, you know, I did a lot of art, you know, growing up and in college, like all of my drawings were very like 2D fashion illustrations, what I used. So they're very like flat, and having to do a plane. This is what I was so frustrated about. It's like, it's not just, I have to make it look realistic, you know, on a program. Like I have to build it. And then it has to be able to be physically built in reality. And then it has to be physically built by thousands of people in reality out of foam. Like, so I figured out a way. I finally figured out a way, but that was one of the hardest things was when I first started, I just kept building prototypes out of foam to try and get what was in my head into the physical universe. And then I would like shave off little parts of the foam and then try and trace it and then try and put it in the computer and then print it out again. And it would just be off. That was a nightmare. It wasn't until I figured out how to use, I used InDesign. That was a program that I used for all my graphic designing stuff. So I figured out how to build it visually completely inside of InDesign and then take the parts and then use that. That was what eventually got it over the hill. Because I was horrible with 3D design. Yeah. Seems to be more masculine sensory, you know, something like that.
Yeah. And so then like the opposite coin to that would be your masculine NI. So is that something that, like, I guess it's technically a demon, but you can hold on to it longer than the sensory. So like once you get it to the NI, it's there, it's solid. You don't forget it. The concept stays.
Right.
How you got there, the sensory information to it just fades away.
Right. Totally. Like the words are not as important to me. Like, yeah. Fill in whatever words you wanted there. I didn't mean that. I meant this. Like, just change the words around. You know what I meant. You know what I meant. You know what I meant. Like, you'll hear that a lot from those of us that have masculine intuition. Because as soon as I get the meaning, as soon as I get the context, as soon as I get that concept, you know, I'm done, which is why it takes me so long to learn. And finally, as soon as I started learning that was my bigger problem, was that I wasn't going all the way to force myself to understand. As soon as I caught on to that, then I was able to go, okay, I need to push for understanding. And once I push for understanding, then I'll have the learning of it. But yeah, it used to take me years to learn things because I would just keep going through as many SE, you know, variations.
You got it, and then you don't actually got it.
Yeah, to an extreme. Absolutely. And then finally forcing myself to be like, okay, I have to push for some kind of concept that connects all of these together. Then I'll be able to get it. And then I can actually use that learning, use the understanding. So yeah, it's just why it took me so long to learn so many things, because of the demon intuition. And that's what I hold on to. So yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of comments saying that your blast is amazing.
Thanks.
But it's your demon blast. So how did you work on it? How did you get it to this point where you can just go on rocket ship?
Well, like I play energy, right? Like I can toss a ball pretty good. Like if Dave weren't in the video, I would be there for 2 minutes and then gone. Like, I don't want to talk by myself. If I were talking by myself, I'd be like, here's the one thing I wanted to say. That took me 2 minutes and we're done here. Like, what's so good about Blast is it like forces itself to get beginning, middle, and end. And it wants to, at the end, give a takeaway. Let me give you the narrowed down bullet points as the takeaway. Right. I don't want to do that. I don't want to tell anybody what to do. Yeah,
that's something I was noticing as you were talking. You were talking and talking. You're like, okay, I need to get to a takeaway.
Yes.
I'm just gonna keep talking. Eventually, it might get there.
Right. That's it. That's just play. It's just play. I'll take a whole bunch of shit and throw it at the wall, and you can find what you wanted to get out of that. And it's really like I'm just play energizing most of the time. But watching Dave, and then also Dave is like a master at Blast, and he's had all these years to kind of work on it as well. He's like, no, this is how you do a show. This is how you produce a show, which is very Blaster, like producing Blaster, like beginning, middle, and end. And so then now I've had to like force myself to, I'm not ready to even record a Q&A until I have the beginning, middle, and end points that I want to make. And it's based on, what do I want to say? What can I say? What do I feel emotional about? Which is like, what? But like, that's what I had to get to the point where I understood. If I don't have some kind of emotional connection to this point, I'm not going to say it very well. I'm just going to spit it out and be like, there, I don't really care. But yeah, it's been that. It's been getting to the point where I have a structure that I pulled from Dave on how do I actually have something to say so I know where I'm going before I even get started, you know?
Right. Yeah. Like start with the goal in mind, and then you can sort of find your way there. Right.
Totally.
We have a question here from Uzi. Oops, I clicked on the wrong person. Here we go. What's Shannon's opinion on similarities of the same quadra?
What does that mean?
The same quadra is like the same functions, just in a different order.
Oh, so like NTJ, SFP?
Right. Yeah. What's your opinion on those? I wanted to know.
Yeah, we just, you can feel it's like talking to the same language, you know, like I have to, like with Benjamin here, I know that everything that I communicate, I have to reinterpret when I'm talking about DI, I know it's logic. And so it's like, you're speaking a different kind of language when you talk to people of another function set. And it's fine. It's just like as if you were to go to a different country. But when you talk to somebody, for me, who has SFP or NTJ functions, it's like speaking English. Like, oh, you speak English. Well, so do I. Okay, great. So I'm just going to say, you know, when you feel this, and they're like, yeah, I feel that. Like, you're just talking to somebody with the same part. So it's very, very easy. And like, it does help with typing because you're like, I know this song, you know, oh, this is the TE song of when I do these things and I keep helping people and I keep helping people. TE, 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 you know, it gets very familiar. It's like it's your own home turf. It's your own home languages. And then any other different language, like the NTP SFJ language for me is the farthest. And it just feels like you're in a different, you know, it's like, oh, that's the German version of language, which you learn. Yeah. You just learn that different language, you know?
Awesome. Do you have anything that you may want to say to wrap it up? Like maybe something about your type or something that people should know, or I don't know.
Sure. Oh, gosh. I don't know. I guess the only thing that I would say about typing or, you know, personality or any of this stuff, like all of this is great. All of this stuff is really great. All of the functions, parts, all of it is just a roadmap. It's a really, really cool roadmap. But the biggest thing that I'm learning out of this whole entire process is 1,000% more on the side of like the hero's journey side. It's like, what are you going to do with this? How are you going to use the roadmap? Otherwise, it's just another distraction. This happens in every industry where you just find a way to get distracted. And this has been one of the most life-changing things because we got to the point where we got very aggressive against subjectivity, very aggressive against biases, and then started playing the game of, if it's all coming from me, that makes me very empowered instead of I can never be made a victim anymore. There's no area on this planet that can now victimize me because the brain wiring is the one that ever made me believe that. That's where this stuff gets really powerful. That's where this function stuff gets very, very effective. But if you get wrapped up into the functions and the parts and know this type, know that type, that's where you just waste time. And it's just another one of those little valves that releases pressure. It allows you to blame. It's one of those release valves of you're not getting started. And you can do that. Maybe you're not ready. It took me years. It took me years. I was not ready for a really long time. I got distracted for a really long time because I never wanted to point the finger back at myself, and I never wanted to really get started. It was much more comfortable to stay in the here and now of my functions are real. My way is real. It feels good to just go by my biases. So yeah, the biggest lesson that I've learned with all of this stuff is it's 1,000% up to deciding to go somewhere on this planet and not just dealing with the current pain, the current, you know, victim feelings or whatever it is that you're going through. It's that future of like, wait a minute, I could actually not be stuck. I could do anything that I actually put my mind to on this planet. And this is just another tool, just another tool. It's not even the greatest tool. It's just another tool. Tony Robbins didn't know about it. Gary Vee didn't know about it. And they're doing amazing things on this planet, you know?
Right. Yeah. So like, I guess also saying, don't use it as like a crutch, as like, okay, these are my functions and I'm stuck.
Totally.
Use it as more of a way to grow. And yeah. Awesome.
Right.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It was awesome having you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Bye, YouTube. I'm not good at saying bye. Everyone's always like, you have a really bad goodbye, and
leave a comment in the below, and then if you want, you can subscribe, and then
right, all that stuff. Okay, have a good one. Okay.